On a freezing February night in 2005, two people walked out of a Philadelphia bar and vanished without a trace. No bodies, no evidence, no answers. Just a black pickup truck that disappeared into thin air, taking with it one of the most baffling mysteries in Pennsylvania history. Welcome to Cold Case Chronicle. If you're passionate about unsolved mysteries and want to help keep these stories alive, make sure to like this video, hit that subscribe button, and drop a comment below. Your support helps us bring attention to cases that desperately need it. Long before their names became forever linked to this haunting disappearance, Danielle Imbo and Richard Petrone Jr. were simply two people trying to balance the weight of adulthood, parenthood, and an on-again, off-again relationship that had defined much of their lives. They came from close families, lived in neighboring states, and had reached that point where responsibilities overshadowed spontaneity. But they still carved out moments to simply breathe. Danielle Imbo was 34 years old, a woman whose entire world revolved around her young son. She lived on Dumbarton Road in Mount Laurel, New Jersey. In a condo she was determined to transform into a stable, loving home for her toddler. During the week, she juggled the demanding work of a loan mortgage processor. On weekends, she'd shift gears completely, singing with a local cover band. Music had always been her outlet, something she held on to even while raising a child on her own. But those who knew Danielle well said her truest happiness came in the quiet moments, curled up on the couch with a crossword puzzle or a murder mystery novel in hand. She wasn't someone who frequented bars or stayed out late on weekends. After separating from her husband, she deliberately paused her dating life to put her son's well-being first. Still, she maintained her connection with Richard, someone she'd known for years. His sister had been one of her closest friends, which kept them in each other's orbit even when romance took a back seat. Her family described Danielle as a fiercely devoted mother, so committed that missing a scheduled visitation or appointment would have been completely out of character. Her brother later recalled that her biggest dream at the time was simple but profound: earning enough money to buy a place with a yard where her little boy could play in the grass. Richard Petrone Jr., a year older at 35, lived across the river in Philadelphia. His life centered entirely around family, specifically his teenage daughter, Angela. He had her name tattooed on his arm, a permanent symbol of how deeply he valued fatherhood. Friends and relatives said he never delegated parenting responsibilities. He'd learned to style her hair himself and gladly spent his free time driving her to tennis practice, band rehearsals, or wherever she needed to be. He lived in a small apartment above his family's bakery, Viking Pastries in Ardmore, where he worked full-time. But baking wasn't just a job for Richard. It was art. He'd studied the craft in California, learning to assemble towering wedding cakes adorned with cascades of chocolate curls. People who saw his work described them as edible sculptures, creations he took immense pride in. In personality, Richard was outgoing, warm, a classic South Philadelphia guy who made friends easily. Music bonded him to his father especially. They were lifelong Bruce Springsteen fans who shared concerts and car rides filled with loud, passionate singing. Richard didn't gamble. He didn't engage in shady dealings. He had no connections to organized crime, despite the rumors that would swirl in the years to come. His family insisted he lived simply, worked hard, and cared deeply about the people in his life. Danielle and Richard's romantic history stretched back to their teenage years. They'd known each other since they were teens, and although life had taken them down different paths through marriages, children, and breakups, their relationship often rekindled. Friends described them as a couple that would drift apart and come back together. Never with drama, simply with familiarity. By early 2005, they were spending time together again, though Danielle was trying to keep her primary focus on motherhood. Still, the two shared a comfortable bond. Easy enough that going out with friends on a wintry Saturday night felt completely natural. On February 19, 2005, the pair went to Abilene's, a bar and restaurant at 429 South Street in Philadelphia. They were joining another couple for drinks and live music. The area was always lively, even in freezing temperatures. That night, the air was bitterly cold, but South Street still pulsed with weekend crowds. Witnesses remembered them leaving shortly before midnight. The couple walked toward Richard's 2001 black Dodge Dakota pickup truck. The plan was simple. He would drive Danielle back across the river to her condo in New Jersey, then head home himself to watch the Daytona 500 the next morning, something he never missed. But they never made it home. The next day unfolded in a way that immediately set off alarm bells. Richard never answered his phone when his mother called. That single detail was enough to spark dread in his family. He always kept his cell phone close. He always returned calls. This silence was wrong. Meanwhile, Danielle didn't show up for a planned salon appointment. Even more alarming, when her ex-husband arrived to drop off their toddler, she wasn't home. An absence her family knew would never have happened willingly, especially with their custody situation already strained and sensitive. By midday, both families realized something terrible had occurred. They began frantically calling police stations, hospitals, friends, anyone who might know where the pair had gone. But there were no sightings, no medical records, no arrests, no messages, nothing. Before long, both families were working together, retracing the roads between Philadelphia and Mount Laurel through heavy snow. They searched bridges, side streets, and contacted every agency they could think of. They spent entire nights driving through the darkness, hoping Richard's truck might appear around a bend or down an embankment. Investigators quickly recognized the disturbing unusualness of the situation. Two adults missing at the same time, along with a vehicle. Yet there was no sign of an accident, no financial activity, no cell phone usage, and absolutely no trace of the truck. Authorities scoured bridges with toll cameras. They checked bank accounts. They reviewed phone records. They even searched the Delaware River and other bodies of water. Nothing surfaced. The case eventually drew in the FBI, state police, and multiple local departments. Over the years, they chased countless leads. A rumor about a hired hit connected to organized crime. Tips mentioning a Camden area group. Theories implicating a motorcycle club after a member was targeted weeks earlier. A possible link to a Philadelphia individual. Claims from a convicted person who said he knew where the bodies were. And allegations pointing toward Danielle's estranged husband. None of these paths led to any concrete evidence. Investigators dug up a basement. They drained sections of water. They interviewed hundreds of people and reviewed tips, placing the couple everywhere from Alaska to Texas. Every single lead evaporated under scrutiny. One of the most confounding elements was the total absence of physical clues. There were no broken windows, no abandoned belongings, no stray tire marks, nothing to indicate a struggle. Even in rivers known for concealing vehicles, a truck that size rarely stays hidden forever. Yet divers never located it. A retired FBI agent who led the early investigation later admitted the case haunted him long after retirement, the way unsolved mysteries often do. He believed firmly that more than one person had been involved in making not just two people, but also an entire truck disappear so completely. Since the couple went missing, none of their financial accounts, phones, or credit cards have shown any signs of use. Not a single transaction. Not one call. Nothing. As the years passed without answers, the once united families fractured. Grief morphed into suspicion. Stress led to finger-pointing. Online posts and theories only deepened the divide. Danielle's brother insisted he couldn't rule anyone out as potentially involved. Members of Richard's family pushed back, hurt by accusations and frustrated by speculation that he'd been gambling, had debts, or had connections to wrongdoing. Investigators, however, found no evidence that either victim had been connected to anything illicit. Danielle's estranged husband faced repeated suspicion from some relatives, despite never being named a suspect by authorities. He denied any involvement and maintained he had no connection to their disappearance. This turmoil clouded the investigation in its early years as families clashed publicly, sometimes posting accusations online, inadvertently feeding misinformation and conspiracy theories. Both families carried immeasurable pain throughout the decades that followed. Richard's mother feared she would pass away without ever learning what happened to her son. She watched her husband's health decline under the emotional strain. Listening to Bruce Springsteen, once a cherished father-son ritual, became almost unbearable. Danielle's brother struggled with feelings of responsibility, especially after promising their late father he would look after the family. Eventually, he accepted that Danielle was never coming home. A rose was carved into their father's gravestone, her childhood nickname, so the family had somewhere physical to mourn her. Even years later, he admitted he followed dark-colored pickup trucks on instinct, unable to shake the habit. By 2008, Investigators had reclassified the disappearance as a murder-for-hire case. Years later, in 2015, the FBI indicated they believe multiple individuals were likely involved in what they described as a carefully planned operation. A reward of up to $15,000 remains available for information that leads to the identification, arrest, and conviction of those responsible for Richard and Danielle's disappearance. At the time he went missing, Richard was a 35-year-old man, about 5 feet 9 inches tall and roughly 200 pounds. He had brown hair, blue eyes, and typically wore a beard and mustache. Notable tattoos included the name Angela on his left upper arm and a series of colorful designs on his right. He was last seen dressed in a gray polo sweatshirt and blue jeans. When Danielle disappeared, she was 34 years old, a woman standing about 5 feet 5 inches tall and weighing roughly 117 pounds. She had brown hair and hazel eyes, and a floral tattoo on her lower back served as a distinctive identifying feature. At the time she went missing, she was dressed in a cream sweater layered under a black jacket, along with denim jeans. She also wore 3 thin silver rings on her middle finger and carried a black purse with 2 handles. More than 2 decades after that freezing February night, there is still no physical evidence, no confirmed suspects, and the truck has never been found. Investigators still believe foul play occurred, and the FBI maintains there are people who know the truth, people who might one day come forward. The case remains open, unsolved, and one of the most perplexing missing persons investigations in Philadelphia history. If this case touched you, or if you want to see more unsolved mysteries brought to light, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to Cold Case Chronicle, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Every bit of engagement helps keep these stories alive and might even reach someone with information. Until next time, stay curious and stay compassionate.